Herc, a former teammate of yours, Jermaine Jones, is blowing up social media and all of hashtag USMNT Twitter with his latest interview to Sports Illustrated. Let's go over some of the key quotes here, and I'll start with this one. He targets the man responsible for the U.S. failing to qualify last time around. Certainly, if you point at the manager, quote, Bruce Arena, with all due respect, is the worst coach I ever had in my whole career. The worst. And he's like the number one American coach, end quote. Specifically, his targeting of Bruce Arena, Bruce Arena, Herc, what do you think?
Let me start off by, it's never a good thing when somebody says, with all due respect, expect the worst right after that. And that said, he came out with the whammy. He came out with the worst. Bruce Arena, for Jermaine Jones, probably wasn't a great coach. And a lot of that had to do with what happened in the failed campaign that was the U.S. men's national team and Jermaine Jones' exclusion from that camp. Jermaine brings up a lot of interesting points in this great article by Grant Wall in Sports Illustrated. And one of those was that there were players that he felt were on there that maybe shouldn't be on there, and that Bruce Arena wasn't the best coach maybe at that moment. Well, he does have a relationship with Jurgen Klinsmann. He didn't have one with Bruce Arena. Bruce Arena comes out and is one of the guys who's completely at fault for not qualifying. But so is Jurgen Klinsmann. And that's where this all gets lost. We keep throwing around blame here, and everybody keeps passing the buck. Nobody wants to say, I was part of this. If you're a player, if you're a coach, if you're anywhere working inside that federation, you all shared a part in this failure. It doesn't matter if you were around in the first game or if you were only around in the last game. You are part of this failure. And I think where fans are getting fed up is nobody says, I failed. Nobody says, I am partly responsible for this. We've seen Jurgen Klinsmann pass the buck. We've seen Bruce Arena pass the buck. We've seen U.S. Soccer pass the buck. It was just a bad night. No, you did not go to the World Cup in 2018 because you lost to Trinidad. You did not go to the World Cup in 2018 because it was a dumpster fire of a cycle. That's why you did not go. A lot of interesting things said there, but nobody in any of the things I've read or heard, past or present, have said, I was part of that.
Pass the buck, pass the buck. I hear you say pass the buck. Then don't pass the buck on this question. Who's more to blame for the U.S. not making it to the last World Cup, Klinsmann or Arena?
How many games did Jurgen Klinsmann play? How many games did he coach?
2 of the 10 in the Hex.
2. How many did Bruce Arena?
8.
Okay, 2 of the 10. Okay, so 2 games and 8. And those 2 games, were they the likes of Trinidad and the likes of one of those weaker teams like maybe Panama? No,
nope.
It was Mexico and Costa Rica. So there were already 2 of your 3 most difficult games, and they got them out of the way. You may have lost those games anyway, with Bruce Arena or without. So if you're asking me, and I can't just say it's solely one person, that's the thing right here. But if you're asking me who's more to blame, one person had more games. One person had more of an opportunity to right the ship. So he's going to have more of a shared blame, but it's shared. I cannot emphasize this enough. Jurgen Klinsmann has his blame, and I'm sure if he really looked at himself, he'll say, hey, I'm partly to blame for this too, because I lost those games because I didn't do things maybe that I should have. But Bruce Arena had how many games? This is a shared fault, and it's difficult for me to say one person is to blame, but who's more to blame? I think the simple numbers will tell you.
You played Major League Soccer and in the Mexican League, so you have perspective having dealt with coaches on both sides of the borders, coaches internationally as well. Jermaine Jones is kind of touching on this, the general standard of coaching in America. How would you describe it?
Yeah, lacking, absolutely. I was fortunate enough to play for one of the best U.S. men's national team coaches in Bob Bradley. I learned a lot from Bob Bradley. But guys like Bob Bradley are almost shunned in U.S. soccer today for what they believe in, for how they say it, for what they feel. And to me, that's damning. U.S. soccer is doing a huge injustice. You know, I ran into a U.S. soccer employee or ex-employee in Manhattan Beach the other day who was a youth national team coach. He told me he left the program because he didn't want to live in Chicago. So you're turning away good coaches because they don't want to live somewhere, because they don't want to stay somewhere, because it affects their family. U.S. soccer has a lot of problems, and coaching is one of them. You can't tell me that U.S. soccer coaching is on par with the rest of the world, because I'm not going to hear it. I'm not going to listen to you. So if you're asking me about the standard, no, it's subpar.
Herc, you referenced a second quote from Jermaine Jones is kind of catching fire from the Sports Illustrated article. I'll read it to you here. There's some players, they play national team now. They're not national team players. With all due respect, we find that again. This is why we struggle. Herc, what do you think of a player coming out now and saying that some players aren't national team players, but not naming names?
Maybe he's got too many names to name. I wasn't at the interview, but I think there's some truth to the fact that this is always opinion-based, by the way. My taste versus your taste. But if you look at the amount of Major League Soccer players compared to other players who are playing around the world, playing abroad, and you ask why there's so many of them, maybe some of that's not talent. Maybe you could say, well, this player plays locally. What if I go with another player who's maybe younger and plays abroad and seeing what comes of that? I think it's no secret that Major League Soccer is a league that keeps improving, that keeps gaining ground with the rest of the world. But if you look at other leagues in the rest of the world, I don't care if you're a substitute or academy player, you have a leg up for playing abroad. That's just simple to me. So there are some players that are getting these call-ups that maybe if you were a coach that wasn't familiar with Major League Soccer, you wouldn't be giving the Major League Soccer players the benefit of the doubt.
So just to be clear, as a former U.S. men's national teamer, you don't have any problem with Jermaine Jones coming out now and saying these things?
Oh, no, I want players to be honest. I want people to be colorful. I'm in the TV business. I live for this. This is what I want. But in its time, hey, it is a very good point you bring. How about these players in their time speak out? And that is a very good point, but I'd rather hear the truth at some point. Doesn't matter if it's before, during, or after. I want this.
There you have it. I'm sure it's not the last we've heard of Jermaine Jones. I'm sure he'll give us plenty more to discuss right here in this space.
Well, thank you very much for watching ESPN on YouTube. For more sports highlights and analysis, be sure to download the ESPN app. And for live streaming, premium content, and let's not forget as well, ESPN FC 7 days a week. Subscribe to ESPN+.